Hello, 2 hours early, our users. My name's John Kulas. I'm a 20-year professor of industrial and organizational psychology, 12-year user of OR for normal, boring, statistical, and analytical operations. But for the majority of those 12 years, for 9 or 10 of those years, I've been executing full projects from within the same environment that I craft my R analyses. And so every week, I hang out here at this channel on YouTube, and we're streaming now to X as well. I hang out live to do some live coding that demonstrates the concepts of literate programming and this what I'm referring to as a way to structure your work that's consistent with this idea of reproducible research. Um, so usually I'm here at 7 o'clock Eastern, and we hang out for about an hour and 20 minutes. It sometimes goes to. But today we're early because I have a conflict, so this is just a temporary thing. Next week we'll be back to the normal 7 o'clock Eastern schedule. And I'm just looking this week. Those of you that access my slides maybe notice, um, but I changed something about this week's slides. So I changed the actual font that's used in these inline codes here because the curly brackets were kind of silly in terms of how they rendered. And I thought this week, for this week's topic, we'll want to make sure that they're actually identifiable as curly brackets. So we hang out every week. I'm here live. I want to be live to answer questions. If anyone has a question about how to do this, or why to do this, or how to get started, or maybe you're doing it but have maybe just want someone to bounce some ideas off of, I'm here for that. So we use the metaphor of a academic office hour. As a professor, my office hours were very, very, very unpopular. So I didn't get very many students come by and say hi or ask questions because everything in class was so lucidly uh, obvious, I'm guessing. Or it could have been that they didn't want to, they didn't want to interact with me one on one. But we're getting kind of a similar level of the problem might be me. So we're getting about as much interest in these online office hours as I had for the in real life office hours. But that's okay because I'm gonna stick with it. And I'm here if you have any questions, just pop by, and that's always going to take precedent. That's why I'm doing it live. That's why I want to be here every week on a semi-regular basis at a semi-regular time. So I'll be keeping an eye on the comments. If you have a comment or question, drop it in there. But in the absence of those, what we do is we focus on just little capabilities using the processes that we talk about on a weekly basis. So little capabilities of, for example, RevealJS slides or PDFs or reports or websites or books. We'll just take one little capability and spend 45 minutes or so on it. And so today I'm really excited because today's topic is something that kind of I had noticed, but I wasn't really aware of what was going on. And what I noticed was that there recently, as I'm crafting documents using Quarto, and Quarto being kind of this second generation or new kind of the new way that the new software that facilitates the creation of all these nice products that we're creating, such as the slides that you're looking at. When I'm crafting Quarto documents and trying to introduce content into those documents, there is a syntax structure that I've been encountering more and more frequently, and I wasn't really familiar with it. I wasn't really sure what it was, but today we're going to cover that. And so what those are is they're actually called shortcodes. They're Quarto shortcodes in particular. If you want to jump ahead and get a little, if you don't want to listen to me blather about what happened last week, you can go ahead and access that hyperlink. Again, the link to the slides are always available in the comments to the YouTube stream. They're also in the description on the YouTube video itself. So if you look at the description of the video, there will be a link to the slides, and the slides have all kinds of hyperlinks and resources embedded within them. So I hope that you use them. But the description as well as the comments this week also has a link to a tutorial. And so if you're new to this, if this is something that maybe interests you or intrigues you, but you're not sure if you want to jump in with both feet and structure your work this way, go ahead and follow that tutorial. It should be able to open it up in a browser and paste information back and forth into your RStudio session if you prefer RStudio, or into your Jupyter Lab session if you, well, it's going to be best if you do it in RStudio. That's what I crafted. That's what I crafted the original source document in. So all you need for that, for the tutorial, is you need Quarto. You need that installed somewhere on your computer. It's not like a R package. It doesn't need to. You don't need to do anything through R. You just literally need to have that software on your computer somewhere. And if you follow the regular installation instructions, RStudio or Jupyter Lab or Positron or VS Code or whatever IDE you prefer, it will find Quarto, or rather Quarto will find you. And then everything will be enabled that you need for that tutorial, for that walkthrough. Okay. Enough of Kulas being professorial here. Let's get into it, and let's see what actually happened last week. So, Mr. Bullwinkle J. Moose, can you please transition us into what happened last week?
While our adventure in England is rapidly approaching a dismal climax, Bullwinkle, you'll recall, had to spend 1 week inside Abominable Manor or forfeit £1 million note inheritance.
But Boris got other plans.
Yes, the dastardly villain built a do-it-himself rocket ship.
It looks nice, but what's it for?
It's for heroes. All we got do is lure Squirrel inside. Moose follows, we slam door, send boat to moon.
It looked like the plan couldn't fail. Thus, at dinner that evening,
Eat your soup, Rock, or it'll get hot.
unfortunately, that soup contained an overdose of knockout drops. 2 sips later,
Poor Rock, he's all Tommy Tuckered out.
following Boris's untimely suggestion, Bullwinkle carried Rocky upstairs into what he thought was a bedroom, but what was in reality the rocket ship.
Listen, strike is clocking 12. Lawyer is due here any episode. And soon as I pull lever, Moose and Squirrel are on their way to moon.
Do hear any episode. I love the fourth wall breaking that Boris, Bullwinkle does that a lot as well. Okay. So because we do these weekly sessions in an open-ended, unstructured, just completely live coding, anything can go wrong kind of manner, at the beginning of each week, we will do a recap that presents what we learned in last week's session. So last week, we took a look at some accessibility features of RevealJS slides in particular. Now, RevealJS slides are one of the products that are facilitated via Quarto, the software we just spoke about, that I'm most geeked up about. I've done now. This is number 130 just on these YouTube streams that we do. Now, I've done many slides outside of YouTube as well, but putting these together, I still enjoy it. So I'm still, I was going to say liking, but I think I can actually say loving. So I still love putting slides together using RevealJS as authored through Quarto. So last week, what we took a look at was some of the accessibility features of these RevealJS slides when you do author them through Quarto. And now I offer that as a caveat because RevealJS slides, these exist independent of Quarto, independent of R. They're just out there on the internet. You can use a different process to craft these, but being someone associated with or interested in data science applications, it makes sense for me to craft these RevealJS slides using Quarto, even if I'm not intending to include some data visualizations or data analysis or data components to the slides themselves. I still really like using these Quarto facilitated RevealJS slides. So the first thing we looked at last week, what I intended to focus on was an extension that further extends RevealJS capabilities to particularly accommodate people who might want some accommodation in terms of their ability to navigate the slides. Now, even without the extension, there are some built-in capabilities that I think are important. and these are in no particular order, and these are not exhaustive. This is not coming from the Quarto team or the Posit team. These are just kind of my listings of features that I've noticed that are helpful when we're crafting these RevealJS slides. Now, my experience as a professor, the accessibility that my students wanted, there were only a limited number of situations that I was aware of, and those were all accommodating someone who had a visual impairment. And um, so that's kind of my background and what I'm coming from with this. But the RevealJS slides themselves, as well as the extension, are thinking broader than that. So there's definitely hearing impairments that are considered. There's vision impairments that are considered. There's physical impairments that are considered in terms of mobility type issues. There's neurodiversity in there as well. And so there's a lot that's actually been there's a lot of thought and care and consideration that's been put into these slides. And so one of the neat things that we found last week that I wasn't familiar with, but I will start using now, is there's something called AxeCore. And AxeCore is a review. It's a review platform, I guess. We can hyperlink to it and see what it actually says. But it's described as a broadly supported open source industry standard tool for accessibility checks in HTML documents. That's fine for us as we focused last week on RevealJS slides, because RevealJS slides fundamentally are presented in an HTML format. So this AxeCore testing works for web pages. It works for static HTML. I shouldn't say static. It works for HTML files, and it works for these RevealJS slides as well. Now, what you're looking at on the right is I went ahead and crafted a HTML page and put some intentional, and we did this last week as well, but I put some intentional kind of accessibility violations in there. And we wanted to see what AxeCore would tell us. And so AxeCore, the estimate of the AxeCore authors or contributors is that it catches about 57% on average of accessibility violations. Now, it kind of gives three different, and this is me, this is not the AxeCore people, but this is my interpretation of what this capability does. It kind of gives three different pieces of information that might have some redundancy to them. One of them is, to what extent is the violation that it caught a problem? And so the only two categories that I saw were serious and critical. Those are highlighted here in this screenshot. They're highlighted with a highlighter yellow. I don't know if there's moderate levels of violation. We only saw that I was aware of, we only saw the serious and critical. So these give you a sense of to what extent you might want to do something about this. And then they give you a description of what the violation is. And so the description for the serious one is ensure the contrast between foreground and background colors meets the standard, the minimum contrast ratio thresholds. This is underlined in light blue. I have for the critical underlined in light blue as well, kind of a longer description of what the violation is. And then there's the third piece, I would say, is a kind of shorthand repeating of what the longer text is in terms of the violation. So the shorthand is a little more just hitting you over the head. It's not, it's maybe divorcing itself with some of the technical language. So for example, the WCAG2AA minimum contrast ratio is excluded from the bottom sentence that just says elements must meet minimum color contrast ratio thresholds. That, to me, as someone who's not living in this world, that makes a little more sense. So to me, that's kind of a third piece of information. It's redundant with the actual text of the serious or critical violation, but that is accompanied by a hyperlink. And so the hyperlink tells you in HTML language where the violation is. And so what we saw with an HTML page was that you can hit that hyperlink and the browser will take you and highlight what the problem is. So P in HTML parlance, that's a paragraph, or that's kind of where between two P tags, and sorry if I'm using the wrong language, I'm not a web developer, but between an opening and closing P, you put text, and then A is the HTML language used for a hyperlink, so that's telling me this is a hyperlink. Now, someone who's not a web developer, this is something that I've just become familiar with over the course of months and months and months, years now, of using primarily Quarto to author these RevealJS slides. So if I hit that P greater than A, or A located within P, which is, I'm guessing, what that actually means, it will take me to the violation in an HTML page. If I have a RevealJS slide deck, I'm still going to get that same violation, but it might not take me to the page. So this is one of the things that we found last week as we were playing with Axe Core, is you're going to get the same violations whether you have a RevealJS slide deck or it's a web page, but the kind of navigation between the information that you get and the ability to locate where the violation is might be a little smoother within an HTML page. In Quarto, it's not a big deal, because in Quarto, I can go back and forth between a RevealJS slide presentation versus just a web page really easily in the YAML of my Quarto document. And we did that last week. If you're interested, you can go ahead and take a look at that. And then the other violation that we got here was I intentionally made two images. One of them had a alt caption on it, and one of them didn't. And so the Axe Core review did actually identify the image that didn't have the alternative text figure caption on it. And so it picked it up quite well. Now, the reason that I actually have a screenshot here instead of embedding the document itself is one of the limitations to Axe Core is that in Quarto, at least, it seems like the feedback that you get is going to be limited to your local session. So this is not something that maybe you can publish it. This is not something that I looked into, because when I tried to publish the web page with the Axe Core review, the Axe Core review would get wiped from it. And so I think that's the way it's supposed to be, at least from its current implementation. So just be aware of that. If you're using Axe Core, it's probably something that's going to be more informative to you locally. So you get to review it as you're developing, as you're creating and crafting something. So I know teachers, educators, professors, this is something that I imagine is going to be helpful primarily in an HTML case. So you're going to need, if you have RevealJS slides, I would want to render those as an HTML web page, not really worrying about the format, but just trying to take care of the accessibility violations there before I render my slides in a final format, which would be as a RevealJS slide. Okay, that's probably too much time spent on that. There's all kinds of built-in capabilities within the RevealJS slides as executed from within Quarto that exist beyond Axe Core. It's just Axe Core, as we stumbled across it, seemed really kind of neat. The slides themselves are built to these open web standards, and the open web standards kind of have accessibility as a primary goal anyway. So to me it's a bit of a game changer from something like PowerPoint. And so to me I can see an advantage just in terms of accessibility and ability to review what you have with the tools that we have available to us that make RevealJS already just kind of something that you might want to be drawn to as you deliver your content. Now, the ally extension, this is, all of these links are leading to the same source. It's just going to bring you to different sections of the GitHub page that explain what the ally extension is actually doing. There's all kinds of capabilities. If you're interested, I did put an iframe in here so you can navigate through this example of the RevealJS slides themselves, and you can get a sense of kind of some of what it does. A lot of this that you see in here, to me, a lot of it looks kind of visual disability focused, but there's definitely more in there. There are audio slide cues that are available just by default here. I'm looking for, oh, there we go. The overlay. I was playing with this earlier, and so it's capturing kind of my going in there and monkeying around a little bit. But go ahead and take a look at that if you like. This takes the native accessibility capabilities of RevealJS slides and it extends them even further. And it is intended exclusively for these Quarto RevealJS slides. So this is something that we talked last week about. Uh, you know, one of the neat things about these slides is you can give your students just a link to them and they can have a local copy. So if someone does want accessibility to be maximized, or if they do want their settings a particular way, you can just give them your slides, give them the link to your slides, and they can kind of customize what their local screen is showing. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you, in terms of what you're presenting to the rest of the class, the rest of the audience, you need to also have your screens maximized for a particular person's accessibility requirements. Okay, so Ally, it was a really neat extension, really quick and easy to use. Again, my kind of forecasting, I haven't used this in a classroom application, but if I did, my thought immediately went to using multiplex with the Ally extension on it as well. So using multiplex is going to give the students who are following along with your presentation, it's going to give them the option to customize their presentation on their local device. So that just seems super cool, super neat. And I'm not aware of the ability to do that with different presentation platforms. So certainly you can do it within RevealJS. Really, really easy. All of these capabilities were facilitated with a single YAML line command, or maybe two YAML line commands. So super, super easy. So thank you to the people who put that together. And it does look like that repository has recent work done on it. So it looks like it's probably going to be something that just continues to grow and evolve. So it's already pretty advanced in my mind in terms of capabilities, but super cool. Okay, so today what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at shortcodes. And as I mentioned in the intro, I've been coming across these, but I wasn't really aware I wasn't really aware of what they were doing. And so what a shortcode is it's I view it as a macro, or a shortcut toward content, or a shortcut toward a capability that is executed within Markdown. So we use inline code to interact with data. To me, this is very similar to inline code, but it's not with data. It's with the text of your document. It's with the narrative of your document. It's within the capability of your document in terms of what's displayed. So instead, it's in my mind, it's programming, but it's programming for text. And so the structure of these shortcodes, the main thing I think, if I were coming at this new, the main thing I would focus on is simply the two curly brackets, the angled brackets as opening and closing fences. And then the in-between part, don't worry about for now, we're going to get to that. So the in-between part is what we're going to focus on tonight. Now, Quarto has a number of shortcodes that are that they've developed and are just there with the most recent installations of Quarto. So if you install Quarto, you have these capabilities. And two of the capabilities I've put here. So if I just put in any Quarto document, if I put the opening fence, the closing fence, so again, the curly bracket, angle bracket to start, same thing to end. And then I put meta, and then there's a number of different things you can take here. But if I put meta title, it's going to grab the title from my QMD file within the YAML. And so it's going to display that. So the shortcode that I used here in the rendered column was just this. I used meta title. And what it rendered was this. Now, this is actually, there's a couple things on here that I was I was kind of surprised by. One is you'll notice there's shadow here. So there's shadow on R is for authoring, and there's also a break. So this break comes after for and before authoring. So if we look at, I don't have R open, bad Kulas. We're on a time crunch today, and I already kind of, why didn't I do, like, this is a silly thing not to do. I should have had my R open. But we're going to take a look at the QMD that I used to create those slides that we're actually looking at. And again, I'm always a little cautious to I'm always willing to share whatever I have with everyone, and everything I have is available to everyone on GitHub. I'm a strong believer of that, but uh, I'm a little cautious about sharing some of these slide scripts in particular because I over the course of 2 years I've just built and built and built, and they might look a little intimidating. And I just always want to let people know who might be new to this that it's really not that bad. It's kind of you layer and layer and layer, and then you look at something a year later and you're like, oh my goodness, that looks complicated. It looks complex. Whereas going through the process, it's really not. You're just adding one capability at a time. So what I have here in terms of the title is I have R is for, and then I put in an HTML break there, authoring, and then I added some CSS. The CSS says add a shadow. Let's take a look at that. I have so much CSS. CSS is it's how you style things in HTML documents. So what Shadow Sharp is doing is it's saying create a text shadow that's 6 pixels down, 6 pixels to the right, and not blurry at all. So that, oh goodness, oh goodness. That third argument that we put here with text shadow is saying how blurry do we want it to be. 0 is saying do it sharp. If I add numbers there, it's going to make it blurrier, so it's going to look more diffused. And then there's a color there as well. So if we actually look at the rendering, here, you can see that shadow sharp is applied. So it's going 6 down, it's going 6 over, and there's absolutely no blurring on this. Now this is repeating what I have, and I have that here. So that's how it's intended to be rendered on the front page. Now I also have some specification in my CSS files that say also use a funky font, and color it this kind of purple color, this plum color. So that's not included in the YAML, but it is included in the kind of overarching specification of how I want my slides to look. And I've changed that over the course of weeks. We go back and forth a little bit on that, but I kind of like the way this looks. So that down 6 over 6, you see it there. And down 6 over 6, you're actually seeing it here as well, which is all coming from this shortcode that says go into the metadata, which is in the YAML, and grab the title. And that's how it's rendered. So it's surprising to me that it literally not only grabbed the title in terms of the content, but it literally grabbed what's in the YAML. So it grabbed the CSS specification, it grabbed the HTML break that I have there in terms of where I want things to actually be displayed. So that was pretty neat. And then there's a version as well. Now, if you look at these slides, I have a version that's put on the back slide as well because I was not doing a good job of keeping up with Quarto versions. And so when 1.9 came out, I was like, well, we should probably start keeping track of that. Now, of course, I don't go in there and put this number in. What I do is I tell R that I want that number to be reported. So the way that I do that is through a bit of R code. So I say R Quarto version. So in the Quarto package itself, I can ask for the version, and it's going to come up as, for my computer, it's going to pull it. It's going to pull 1.9.37. Now, that, of course, in R, there's always multiple ways of doing things. If you're in a Quarto document, you can also, instead of engaging with R or Python or Julia or whatever your analytical processor is that you favor, that you choose to use, I could just, within Quarto, I could just write this, give me the version, and it would spit out the same information. And so these are two ways in which shortcodes are used. So let's take a look at some other ways that they're actually used. And I'm gonna go back into R. I think we can stay in the live streams folder. This is where I have, I don't want to do that. Let me show you one other thing before we get into shortcodes themselves. So the reason that I stumbled across shortcodes was not because of versions or pulling data from the YAML of a document. The reason that I stumbled into shortcodes was because the way in which I operate, the way in which I use emojis and logos and things like that are through a package called Iconify, and Iconify uses that same structure. So here on line 163, you're actually seeing that same shortcode convention, but that same shortcode convention here is not using a capability that the Posit team came up with. It's using, this guy, I believe he might be associated with the Posit team, but it's using a capability that was developed independent of Posit and independent of the Quarto development team, as far as I know. So the Iconify extension actually uses this shortcode convention to display icons and logos and things like that. So if we actually look at the last page here, I'm pulling these two images, the R image and logo, as well as the Quarto image and logo. I'm actually pulling those from the Iconify package, and the way in which I do that syntactically is through using this kind of same structure that these shortcodes use. So the extension was authored such that it uses shortcodes is a different way to say that. Now, the scripting again looks a little complex here, I guess, but really what you're starting with is you're starting with the name that the name of the extension or capability that you're interested in. Here for me it's Iconify, and as we get into this, we're going to see that we're going to execute this through building extensions. If we want to create our own, we're going to build an extension, and I'm hoping that we have enough time to actually do that tonight. Then it takes arguments and keys as well, and so that gets a little more complex. What I'd hope to get to tonight is, let's take a look at what the Quarto team has out of the box, and then we'll see if maybe we want to develop our own shortcode, which I think would be kind of fun, kind of neat. Okay, so I'm gonna start a new project reluctantly because I have too many projects already. Oops. Usually when I do this, I use GitHub for almost everything I do. So by default, as I'm talking and trying to talk and give you something entertaining at the same time, I kind of screwed up. By the way, speaking of giving something entertaining at the same time, I got a new sound clip this week, and I'm gonna merge it with another one. I didn't have time to do it, but I think I'm gonna merge it with another one. Now, what do you think about that?
What?
I said, what do you think about that?
What?
Yeah, those two are gonna get together eventually. So on this stream, there's a lot of what's that are relevant. Okay, I'm gonna put it on my desktop. We're gonna call it Shortcodes. Not Shortcodes, Shortcodes. And the reason I'm doing this is if we develop our own, we're going to want to have an underscore extensions directory there for us. That's how these are going to be executed in terms of a custom shortcode, or at least that's what the recommendation is from the Quarto team. Okay, so let's just use a couple of these. I'm going to open a new Quarto document. These should work within different document types. I don't think I've ever, on these weekly sessions, I've never done a Word document. No reason to start tonight, I guess. So let's just, again, my recommendation is to always, call it shorty. My recommendation is to always just try the boilerplate template document that RStudio gives you. And you just want to make sure that everything that you have on your local machine is set up okay such that you can execute these. So there we go. That's the boilerplate document. Normally we would put a picture in there just to customize it because that's what we do on these weekly sessions. I'll grab this one of Rocky and Muggsy. Rocky and Muggsy, by the way, are kind of our mascots for this week as I was coming up with an image for, ooh, I'm not sure that's going to come through. You know, as I was coming up with an image kind of metaphor for this week's topic, Muggsy and Rocky in particular, I do not know why, but these two have internet images that are hidden on these wikis. Look at all these wikis. And these wikis, I don't know why, but it's very difficult to pull an image from these wikis. Here's one that's not a wiki, so this should be okay. So the exclamation point square bracket, it looks a little funny. Exclamation point square bracket, and then in parentheses, the URL to the image itself should in our document render as an image. That looks great. Now the use of these codes, the use of these short codes, I am going to use my slides and go to my hyperlink page that talks about the different shortcodes that are actually built in. And I'm guessing that this list is going to grow. And there's a couple of things here that really interest me. So first of all, this we can just do version. Version, I already showed you on the slides what that looks like, but let's see what it looks like in the document itself. So here, before the running code head and after the image of Bugs not being happy that he's right there between Rocky and Muggsy, we'll just put version, and that should actually be sufficient to call up the Quarto version that we're running. And then you see in my rendered document, I have this 1.9.37. And again, I could also use inline code, so I could say R Quarto. What did we use before? Did I start a new session? I started a new session. Quarto version. I think that's what it was. Let's put it in the console first to make sure that it actually works. There it goes. So that was it. So we'd probably want a prefix on both these, so we can say we are using Quarto version. And on both of those, you can kind of see you have choices here in terms of how you might want to render that information that's actually not something that you need to personally go in and change, but it's a way to structure your documents such that if the software changes, the way in which you report it is automatically changed. Interesting. So actually, it looks like those might be rendered slightly differently. Boy, it's hard to tell. It looks to me that like this 9 is a little larger than this 9. It may just be an optical illusion, so that might not be the case, but it looks like it might be. So this is how shortcodes are used. It's like I said, I'm kind of viewing this as a metaphor to inline code that we use with analytical processors, but instead of calling up data, so this is a little unusual. The way that we would normally do it is is it n row or n rows? It's n row, it looks like. So the way we would normally do it is we would call up a number. So I don't have to look in the empty cars data set. I should just be able to use the inline code and say report to me how many rows there are, please, because I don't want to go in there and have to change that if my data changes. Now, empty cars, the data set's not going to change, but your data that you're dealing with is going to be dynamic and it's going to change. So that's the way this inline code is normally used to interact with data. We can also use it kind of in a non-traditional way, or if we want to have the same kind of effect but for text, we can go ahead and use some of these short codes, and that's what we're doing here. Okay, so let's see what some of these other short codes are. I'm going to change running code to just short code or shot code and get rid of the stuff underneath because it's a little distracting, I guess. Actually, I'm going to get rid of the stuff above the picture as well. So we'll just stick with we'll start with our picture and then we'll do some short codes. Let's see what else we have here. So we have variables. That's going to require a little more elaboration in our project, so we don't need to. Meta is the stuff that I thought was super cool. So meta, we can take information from the YAML of our document. And so the title we've already seen. We can go ahead and do that again. Here it's called untitled, so it's not going to be all that interesting. So meta title should repeat untitled. If we change, now if we go and change that to the world's greatest novel, that changes to the world's greatest novel. So you can start to see some self-referential information that you might be interested in using. I can see reports and how reports might be I might want to use this in reports is what I'm trying to say. Did I say Bugsy? No, it's Mugsy and Rocky. Boy, we got a lot of Rockies in here, don't we? Is authored by, now we should be able to pull, I haven't tried this, but we should be able to say meta author. And it should pull that. There we go. So the world's greatest novel is authored by Mugsy and Rocky. And again, that's pulling it from the YAML of my document. That's super cool. So that is super neat. I love that. I love that capability. I can see wanting to use that. I can actually, I'm just now forecasting kind of a combination of this self-reference into the document with maybe parameterized files, and getting kind of fancy with our reporting. That's pretty cool. That's pretty neat. Environmental variables. These are this might be like date. I was thinking we could do, what I thought we could create was a date shortcode. Yeah, and so this looks like it'll give product versions, but maybe not dates. The way that I would normally do a date is I would say today is, and then I would use again the R function of just give me sysdate. And when I render that, it's so one of the issues with Quarto, it's not an issue, but it's something that maybe some of you might encounter. Those of you, I'm guessing, that are watching this are more R users than Python or Julia or other language users, just because that's what I tend to use on these weekly sessions. Quarto does not necessarily default to a language. So at times, so if you see some funniness in your documents, one of the first things that you're going to want to do is to specify the engine that's actually powering the analytical portion of the document itself. And so knitr is the engine that's associated with R. Jupyter, I believe, is associated with Python. And then the Julia, I forget. I don't believe I'd have to look that up, so I'm not sure about that. But sometimes you're going to need to force the engine in order to get the inline code to work the way that you want, or your code chunks to work the way you want. So just be aware of that. So what happened there when I didn't have the engine specified was the R code itself was not being rendered. It was ignoring it. So it's a very easy fix to get around that. But so the, the way in which I can get date is here through the sysdate. What I thought we might do is see if we can come up with a shortcode of that as well. And I think we have enough time where we'll do that. There are a couple of other things that I do want to try before we do that. One of them, which I think is super cool, is this lipsum shortcode. Now, if you've watched me over the course of these 2 years, you've seen me use a lorem ipsum generator. So they're actually, I've also taken text just from like Moby Dick and other sources. But there are actual generators here where you can say, hey, give me 5 paragraphs of just Latin. I'm guessing it's Latin. I don't even know. And that's helpful to see how content might be displayed within your document. It's especially helpful, for example, if instead of having this image take up the entire screen of my document, if I wanted to inset that, so if I wanted to maybe have that be enveloped by text, just kind of smaller and off to the side, it's nice to have some example text to see how that wraps around it. So it's helpful to have, and just by convention, it's tradition. There's no reason it needs to be lorem ipsum, but it just has been by tradition. So the fact that it will generate lorem ipsum text for you is pretty neat. Now you can specify how many paragraphs by just using a value after lipsum itself. So let's try that. Let's see what that looks like. This is the one that I was really kind of intrigued by and interested in and wanting to check. Love it. So it gives me, wow, gives me a lot. So I guess by default it's giving 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs of lorem ipsum text. Let's see if it gives the same thing every time. Lorem ipsum dolor sit amit. I think that means this is a bunch of nonsense, but my amit hurts, I think is what that means. I'm going to render it again just to see if it gives the same or different. It looks like it gives the same. Okay. So it must have built in, it probably actually means something. So let's, I know this isn't what we were intending to do, but I'm never going to do this again. So let's feed this into an AI and see what that actually means. Can you translate this into English, please? So we'll see now. We'll see if the posit team has a sense of humor, if maybe they're just grabbing that from somewhere else. I don't know. And then we'll find out what the dolor means. Like what is hurt? I know that means hurt or doesn't feel good, but kind of curious. What? Maybe I probably copied too much, so let's not give it quite so much. Let's give it now. If we're gonna be part of the team, and we're gonna hide something, it's not gonna be in the first paragraph. So let's do etium maximus. Now, if it's a gluteus maximus, we'd know right away that they got a sense of humor. But it doesn't, so I don't know that they do. Look at the tabs. Tabs everywhere. And if it boots us out again, we'll just go to Google Translate. Come on, Grok, what are you doing? I mean, we got to know this, right? It's got to be Latin. I think lorem ipsum is Latin. Latin to English. Even the Etium maximus, even the greatest pregnant Acumasin are I think we broke the internet. So Quarto, Quarto team, you may have broken the internet. Let me just verify that we're way off course here right now. Sorry about that, but what language is that? I always thought it was Latin. Maybe it's like an archaic Latin or something, or like a, I don't know. What can we do here while it's thinking? Let's get a,
Like my old pappy used to say, there's a polecat in the hen house.
all right, we got to come back to that. The internet is blocking us. So there is, there is actually, did I tell you, by the way, we got copyright struck last week? So I actually got, we're under attack. So somebody wants us off the internet. We're very dangerous here. Our small band of our users and document creators, we're under attack. But apparently, we might also have stumbled across some secret kind of code that the internet doesn't want us to know. That's embedded within the Quarto lorem ipsum text. Okay. So let's see if we can actually minimize that. We'll see if we can just get 2 paragraphs. It looks like by default it gives 5. We don't know what it means. It might be the code that cracks like human, alien interactions. Okay. So yeah, that works just fine in terms of limiting it and specifying it. Lipsum, I'm very happy to know about that. I will use that. Placeholder, I think is kind of cool as well. So we mentioned, or I just mentioned, one of the applications you might want to specify lorem ipsum text is if we want to wrap this. Alternatively, you may have text, but not the image in mind yet. So maybe you just want a placeholder image. So we should be able to, let's see if we can put that, well, we won't be able to put it in the lipsum, but we can, and I think we can also specify the format of the image. We'll just try a placeholder now. We should be able to specify the size, the format of it, so on and so forth. There we go. So it's just a good visual cue that there's something there that we might actually later we will want to mess with. Yeah, so we can change the size. It looks like it's width by height. I don't know why everything computery is width by height, and in the real world, isn't it always height by width? And maybe I don't spend enough time in the real world. I don't know. There we go, 700 by 400. And so it sizes it appropriately as well. So that's pretty neat. That's actually super cool. I can see using that. Okay. So we're 5 minutes up to the top of the hour. I mentioned I do have kind of a conflict tonight, but you people are more important than that. So let's see if we can make our own shortcode. So I'm interested in making a shortcode that does this, that actually replicates sysdate. Just like the version shortcode can also be executed using an R command through the Quarto package. There's probably other ways to do it as well. But let's actually see if we can, and I'm going to get rid of everything else just because we saw what it does. We don't need to see it. Today is sysdate. Let's try to replicate with our own custom shortcode. Now you may say, Kulas, silly Kulas, you said we have 5 minutes left. How in the world are you going to do this? We're going to try to use AI for this. So in order to create your own shortcode, you need to use a different language called Lua. I know nothing about Lua, but we'll see if we can actually, let's see if we can create our own shortcode. So I think there's a link here. I do have in the slides a direct link to this page. And so we're going to use this command to create our own shortcode. So I'm going to call it date as well. So I'm going to go into the terminal. It's a Quarto command. So that means that we're going to want to engage not with the console, but with the terminal. And again, if you don't have, that was really dumb on my part. If you don't have the terminal tab in your RStudio, go to Tools in RStudio. So up on the upper menu, go to Tools, and then you'll be able to open a new terminal. Open a new terminal there. The mouse features don't always operate as they normally would within the terminal itself, and that's why I had to do that kind of silly uh, silly deletion there. Now I want to make sure that what I copied is actually copied, so I'm gonna paste it into a different document that I was working on for a different project. Hi Alicia, if you're out there, you'll probably recognize what I was doing there with that document. So I'm going to paste in this Quarto create extension, and we'll call it date, because what I want to do within my project directory is I want to see if we can create a shortcode that just simply presents current date, just like sysdate does. Now, what I think, and I haven't gone through this before, what I believe is going to happen is this Quarto create extension command is going to, within our project directory, it's going to create one of those underscore extension folders with some template information in it. So we'll call it date. I thought we did that when we said date, but apparently not. Whoa, didn't like that. Oh, so we want to say it's a shortcode. So again, I haven't been through this process before, but just a quick review of the error. It's a very informative error. So it's saying, it's not asking me what I want to call the extension. It's calling me what's the type of extension, which the name threw me off there. I guess type is something that just kind of intuitively would make a little more sense, but what we're doing is we're creating a shortcode. So that's gotta be what we want to do. Oh, didn't like that either. Type date isn't valid. All right, so let's see. Oh, why did I not see that? Okay, so I'm sorry, going a little too fast. When I saw shortcode here, for whatever reason, I was conflating the name of the extension, which is shorty, with shortcode. So to me, those are the same thing, which they're not. So we literally want to put this command in the terminal. So when it was giving us that feedback, it was saying at the end of your command there, you should have shortcode. Now we can say date. There we go. Okay. So look at this. I get some why does it say shorty? Oh, we called it shorty. I'm sorry. My goodness. You know, I'm going to a social event, and based on my brain right now, I'm not sure that a social event is the best place I should be going. Let's see if I thought we would get an extensions file there, but it's not. Looks like it's not showing up here. I guess instead of giving an underscore extensions, it just gives a folder with the shortcode on it itself, and it does come with some pre-populated information in it. And so this is cool. It's actually super cool. So the way that this is structured is such that if we really like the capability here, we could publish this and other people could use it. So it no doubt is the process used to create some of those other extensions that I was kind of referring to. It picked up. How did it pick up me? Wait a second. Do we have we don't have John Kulas anywhere. How did it pick that up? Okay, I'm a little blown away by some of this stuff. I was not expecting that, but I know where we want to actually work is here in this Lua file. And so currently it's giving me some capabilities here. So in my, we don't need to be in the example one. We can be in Shorty and we can try it. So I'll just say date. And my expectation is date is going to print this, hello from date. We can say hello from Rocky. And this is really bad practice. Really bad practice twice over. So we shouldn't change the default before trying it. I also shouldn't put an ampersand in there because ampersands are kind of special characters, but we'll try it because we're living on the edge, people. Oh. You know what? I need to call up the extension here. So that's something that probably is in that example. Where's my example file? Example QMD. Huh. So I thought in the YAML that it would actually, oh, I know what's going on. So we have in here, we have kind of its own YAML that has the shortcodes specified. That's getting called up in my example QMD is because of its placement within the project directory. Okay, so we actually have a rendering here of a document that says what is in here. Now I want to engage with a now it looks just like any other, it looks almost like an OR function here in terms of its structure. So let's give Grok one more try. If Grok doesn't work, I'm going to go to GitHub Copilot, which is kind of my other, oh come on thing. What is going on? Grok is usually, I've been more and more impressed with Grok as kind of a helper with coding. So I'm going to say we're creating, I have no idea what's going on though. So this kind of difficulty that we're having during this current session, this is new to me. We're trying to create a Quarto shortcode that returns the current date. Can you help rewrite? Can you rewrite? Not help. Can you rewrite the following code such that the current date is returned instead of hello from Rocky and Muggsy? And then again, these AIs, I would like as a human a hard return. So this looks like Lua code that we could probably change. So it's year, month, date. Looks like we can that's probably enough for us to go in there and tweak it if we want. Oh, it also gave us, yeah. I mean, this is what I mean. The Grok's been getting really good, actually. So I'm going to save this. And then let's go back into the example and see if this works. Today's date is... That's awesome. I mean, how easy is that? We just wrote our own shortcode. I mean, we did. Grok did, or AI did. I don't know any Lua. Now it's got these dashes in here, so those dashes are being rendered just as dashes. Should be able to do commas and such as well. So let's try. And this notation is shared across languages. So the B, D, Y, A, Those are all used in R as well. So if we wanted to specify dates in R, did it just change? Okay, so it just changed without me rendering that document. So what we're seeing here is a preview. I'm still getting used to previews and what previews do within Quarto and RStudio. So what I did was, now watch the rendering on the right. The specification that we have for date now is going to change to, we're going to get the day of the week, that's the A, the month, that's the B, the day in terms of the number, and then the year as well, with a comma between the day of the week and the year. So that's going to, it's it's just going to add a Tuesday in front of this. Now, when I save my Lua, when I save my Lua filter, the actual specification of the shortcode, it changed in the preview, which is really funky. Okay, cool. That could have been easier. Shortcodes. So shortcodes are, I'm going to be looking into these more. I'm probably going to be using these. I might even use some custom ones because, again, it's such an easy way to do something uh, or alternate. And then we can put the R code in there, sys state. And we can change the format of this as well. Now that's not going to auto update on my preview. I'm gonna have to render that. That is so cool. Man, all right. I didn't think it would be that easy. Thank you, AI. That to me is a good use of AI. And thanks, peeps, for being with me 2 hours early. Next week, let me know if there's anything that you're super interested in seeing. I kind of have an idea, but it's gonna be a little different in terms of you just being there when I'm working on a project, thinking about putting up a website for my band or the current people that I'm playing with. They've been talking about putting up a band website, and so I was thinking about maybe doing that live and showing you how to create it and publish it and post it on GitHub, things like that. But that it's a little different, so that's just going to be like me kind of going through a normal project. Let me know if you're seeing this, if that's something that interests you. I'd certainly be willing to do that. If not, we'll probably just find another feature and focus on that and see how that operates. I'm super impressed with shortcodes. Those are cool. Those are a lot of fun. Creating a custom one was a lot quicker and easier and painless than I thought. Thank you, people at Posit and Quarto, the Quarto team. Uh, that to me, that to me was super painless and super cool. How neat to create a capability like that. I know it's very limited in terms of what it does, but very neat to be able to create a capability like that so quickly and so easily. All right, thanks everybody. See you next week.